Hello and welcome to On the Kerbs. I'm your host, Tima Albers Daly. Joining me this week is Rally Co-Driver Laura Cooledge. We caught up recently to chat about how she got into motorsport to begin with, why she chose the Ford Anglia as her car of choice, her research of women in motorsport, and much more. So without any further ado, let's get straight into it, and I hope you enjoy our conversation. Hi Laura, thanks for being here today. First of all, how are you?
Oh, no worries. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm very well, thank you.
Great to hear. So first question I'd like to ask everyone who comes on here, what first got you into motorsport?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I've been out my entire life, really. Something that I've always been around, watching my parents compete. My dad is a rally driver. My mum co-drives. She actually got involved in motorsport, not with dad, but she was already involved in her own right. So I've, from a very early age, I've been around watching them at events and, really enjoyed going, watching the rallying, sort of got a really good understanding of the sport. And I just sort of was itching as soon as I was old enough to get involved myself. So I started competing in motorsport at the age of 14, driving in production car trials. And then I started co-driving in special stage rallying from the age of 16. So I started with single venue rallying and then progressed quite quickly to multi-venues. But funny enough, I think it's something that's almost innate within my family because I've heard stories when I was a baby. If I was that my dad was doing, my mum told me a story before. She was holding me as a baby and we were standing on the side, and as soon as he would go, somehow I would recognize the engine of our car and I would pack up, but I wouldn't do that with any other car going past. So I don't know what it is, but yeah, it's almost ingrained in me. Yeah, completely.
I think I might know the answer possibly to the next question then from what you're saying, but what is it about rallying and co-rally driving that you love so much? But I mean, it seems like it's in the DNA as well from what you're saying.
Yeah, it is. With my mum and dad as role models, it was always just natural that I'd get involved. And of course, I had their expertise to sort of, help me along the way as well. But for me, it's not only a great family day, I do co-drive a lot for my dad, which is brilliant. But the adrenaline you get, so when you're on the stage, it just can't be beaten, that feeling. When you're on the start line, you are nervous. It's a little bit nerve-wracking, but I seem to find that as soon as I get into it, I instantly relax. I actually feel extremely safe when I'm competing. I've just got this massive trust in my dad. I know that whatever happens, and we have had some dodgy moments, nothing will ever go wrong. We'll always be all right. So yeah, I can relax. I completely enjoy it. But for me, I think rallying is just the best high-speed discipline. I know that's controversial. Probably a lot of people will disagree with me, but it's the amount of skill you have to have in the sport. Rally drivers, if you look in the WRC, they're competing, doing possibly over 10, 15 stages every single day for 2, 3, 4 days straight, which it's not disciplines. But I just also love the fact that it's a real team sport. So you work as a team, the driver and the co-driver throughout the event. And, that relationship you have as a team is really, really important. So my role being a co-driver is vital, ensure that the driver, of course, knows where they're going throughout the stage, the pace notes, and the information that I provide helps us to go as fast as we possibly can on that stage, of course, taking into account the conditions and what's coming up. But there's actually a lot more to co-driving than that. So a lot of people think it's just a case of like the navigation on the stage, but it's a lot more full on. So you're not only navigating the stage, navigating in between stages and doing all the timing, but you're actually the one in charge of all the logistics to do with the event. You're making sure that everyone is in the right place at the right time, be that the crew, sort of organizing everything. So it's really full on and intense, but it just gives you such a rush of adrenaline when you've had a brilliant day. And yeah, it's fab, but also it's just a really family, it's a family friendly sport. It's really fun. I think overall there's just nothing better than being able to fly through a forest at top speed. It's just the best feeling.
So there's that extra level of satisfaction you don't get from track circuits there, really, isn't there? And I mean, from what
No,
from what you're saying as well, and talking to a few other Rally Co-drivers, you're saying about how you kind of, it's much more than just navigation. You kind of end up being the unofficial team manager in a way, and you're like, how am I ending up doing so many
completely.
different things?
Yeah, you have to be on the ball at every, the whole time. If there's a lapse of concentration, then that's really going to screw things up. So yeah, it's very intense. But back to your thing about the circuits, I think this is another reason why rallying is so brilliant, because every stage is different. You've got different surfaces, perhaps stages of different lengths. You can have a 15-miler stage. You can have really long stages, and it's not a controlled environment like a race circuit. On a race circuit, things are a lot more predictable. Rise the track. But yeah, with rallying, you can't do any of that. You have to be on the ball at all times because you just don't know what could come up.
No, definitely. But I mean, it sounds like you just get in that zen, in the zone kind of feeling, and then it's just kind of all flows quite nicely then. And I mean, there's that extra satisfaction that, again, I'm trying not to crap all over the motorsport that I'm kind of a fan of on track circuits, but that whole kind of thing, if you're that close to like the scenery, as it were, then when you are on the edge of that, then it's that extra level of satisfaction that you probably just makes you want to keep going back for more.
Massively, and that's why it's so important to team, because you're in that car for a long time with your driver, so you want to get on well, but also that sort of chemistry and that relationship really comes to play when you are given the pace notes, because you can really get into a brilliant flow where everything is just seamless and works perfectly. And you don't get that with everyone. It's something that you've got to build on, and yeah, work on. But luckily, obviously, rallying with my dad, I have a lot of trust in him, and we've already got that relationship. So that was just natural. Yeah.
As well as you've got quite an easily identifiable car in a bright yellow Ford Anglia. What was the thought process behind that?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's very bright. It's very bright. And I'm not going to lie, I wasn't a fan of the choice when I was 8 years old. So it used to be white and blue. And when I was 8 years old, my dad sort of was like, oh, well, we're going to change things up, want to make it a bit brighter. Now, my request was pink and purple at that age. I didn't get it. He went yellow and blue. So I can't say I'm a massive fan of the colour scheme. But yeah, it's very bright. But I can't claim to have any influence on the choice of the car either, because my dad built it for autocross back in the 1980s, and then he converted it to rallying in the 1990s. So it's been in my family longer than I have.
Everything about this is just so very family orientated, even down to the nuts and bolts of the car.
Yeah, completely. My dad has built that car. He has touched every single piece of. He's built it all completely himself, and I don't think many people can necessarily say that about their cars. And I think sometimes he probably prefers the car to me. But yeah, that was the choice. But also we've had various other rally cars over the years, so
I can't
numerous
spot those as easily.
Yeah, exactly. We've Dad's rallied Toyota Corollas, and my personal favourite rally car's got to be a Mark II Escort. I love them. But I think what's great about the Anglia is that it's something different. It's really unique. There's not many of them about, and it's the last thing that people expect when they're in a forest and they see that flying along. They just, they don't expect it. And it gets a lot of attention because it is so different. And I think that people do enjoy seeing something different rather than the modern machinery that we see so much of these days.
I was wondering how many Harry Potter comments you get there. It's like, oh, we found it in the woods and we just tamed it back and now we've taken it out for some rallying now.
Well, do you know what? We really have. So the Anglia, I think, really superstitiously, I didn't do this rally. It was my mum and dad. It was before I was old enough to take part. But it was just a single venue rally, really locally to us in Woodbridge in Suffolk on the airfield. And boys came along and said, the Potter car, this car hit into a tree. My mum and dad were like, oh, no, this isn't, it looks like the Harry Potter car. This isn't the Harry Potter car. And on that event, like one of the next stages, what did they do? Hit into a tree. They haven't done that since. They probably haven't even done it before. And funnily enough, Rupert Grint, who of course plays Ron Weasley, has stood by our very car and had a photo. So
I was just say there's some marketing free publicity if you ever want it there.
Yeah.
Oh. And you've already been racing this year. How has it gone so far?
Yeah, so we did Snetterton State in February. That's a really local rally to us. It's just a single venue circuit rally. So we use that sort of event as more of a test, really, because what we're more about is the multi-venue rally and the closed roads, that sort of thing. We really enjoyed it, but unfortunately the weather wasn't on our side. So very sort of around lunchtime, it started pouring with rain. It did not stop for hours. And as it was at a circuit, they just built up so much standing water. And of course, being rear-wheel drive, it was so difficult to find any grip. We were constantly sideways the whole time, and normally, we take any opportunity we can to be sideways, but it wasn't fun. It was it was just really difficult to find grip. We unfortunately weren't enjoying ourselves in the afternoon because we were thinking at any moment now something could go wrong. We didn't have the best tires, so it was good, but like I say, it was just a test really early in the year before we get to the proper event.
So talking to the proper events, then what are your 2022 plans?
My plans? Well, my next event is actually later this month, and it's not with my dad, it's my friend Laura Christmas. So we're going to be competing in the Corbo Seats Tendring and Clacton Rally. It's a closed roads rally, and there's actually the first ever closed roads rally to take place in the UK back in 2018. It's only an hour or so away from where I live, so it's really local to me. We know the roads, which is brilliant, and we'll be competing. She's got an Austin Mini, so we'll be competing in that, which will be really fun. And my mum and dad are also doing the rally in the Anglia, so I think we'll be both out in the oldest cars competing, which will be fun.
It'll be a fun little bit of extra rivalry there as well, though, won't it?
Oh, there definitely will, and I think it's also really nice for Laura and I to do it together because we're an all-female crew. As we'll probably talk about in a little bit later, women in, getting more women in motorsport is really important to me. So I think for, there's thousands of spectators and they're used to probably just seeing male crews. There's not even many mixed crews. So if there's any, young girls out there who are coming out to watch and they see both of us, I really hope that it will inspire them and they can see us and think, oh, I could do this too.
Definitely. I mean, like you're saying, you chose to research women in motorsport for your dissertation. Where was this passion come from, and what kind of led to that? And how did it end up in a museum in Coventry?
Yeah, that's a bit surreal. But for me, personal experiences, I'm lucky. I obviously, as I've alluded to previously, I've come from a family, really deeply ingrained in motorsport, and they've always been really, really supportive. They were the ones who introduced me into the sport. So from that side of things, I've always felt welcomed. I've had good role models, particularly my mum, of course. But has been times for me when it has been difficult. So, age 14, competing in production car trials, quite frequently I was the only female at the event. So, that was a little bit difficult, not having anybody around that I felt I could relate to or resonated with me. And also there's, of course, the barrier of not only being female, but also being young and probably one of the youngest competitors out there. You just sort of, there's, of course, stereotypical views like typical female driver, sexist comments, but you also are, lacking in experience anyway. But it's just annoying the additional barriers you've got to break through as a female.
So it's tricky enough as it is learning the ropes. You don't need the extra hassle on that.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. And it is a difficult sport to get into for anybody and everybody. That's the thing. But yeah, as a female, there's just additional things. So I have experienced, comments at events or people being, less welcoming or sexist, which is off-putting, and I think a lot of women may have actually withdrawn their participation due. So because of that, and also there's a statistic that Motorsport UK released, which says that basically 5% of all of their license holders are female, which of course is a tiny, tiny percentage. So I just wanted to use my undergraduate dissertation and study to investigate that and find out why that is, what barriers women face, and how inclusive the environment currently is. So I spoke to 150 women from a range of roles in the motorsport, and unfortunately I uncovered some quite shocking findings. But I always knew, of course, women are the minority, but I just didn't necessarily know the extent to which the barrier, there's so many barriers women face, really shocking comments. So some of my findings were 47% of all women in my have felt uncomfortable whilst competing, volunteering, or working within the environment. And 1 in 4 have felt excluded from competing, volunteering, or working in motorsport because of their gender. But what really brings it to life is the comments and the stories that I was told from these women. So they told me that no one took them seriously. They said you have to prove yourself a lot more as a woman. One lady's more successful she's in motorsport, the less nice people are about her. And one lady, when driving in competition, was actually told with an ask like that, all you should be doing is being a grid girl, which is totally unacceptable. So yeah, it was really, really shocking. I was really, really, surprised. I always knew there was going to be more barriers from what I had faced personally, but I didn't realise the extent to which it really does take place.
There's always more layers there than you'd wish there would be. I mean, not that you wish there'd be any, but there's definitely more than you'd expect, and it's never fun to discover that.
No, not at all, especially in this day and age. I finished my dissertation in 2020, and you'd think around about now things would be changing. In other sports like women's football, it's the fastest growing women's sport. So we can see so much happening in other sports like football, rugby, cricket, that are typically male sports. There's so much growth for women in those sports at the moment. So I was really surprised that, things are still so archaic in motorsport. But I've now been able to harness my findings. So after all of those stats and the findings came out, I enlisted the help of some other female role models in my area, and we formed a group to discuss how to break down these barriers and get more women involved. So we launched something called the Better Together Initiative. And as part of this work, we've run presentation evenings to raise awareness from within of the issues that women face. We have launched a social media campaign to sort of, again, and that included quotes from my dissertation that women shared with me. It's a man's sport, really to provoke people to think about their actions and what they say. And we sort of added a bit of a positive spin at the end, because everyone can make a difference. So I think we do need to give motorsport a future, and we do need to make it more accessible to everybody, not just women. So although this focused on women, the focus is really to make the environment better for everybody.
If you can have those general kind of things where everyone feels welcome, then of course women will feel more welcome in there. But again, everyone else who's maybe thought about it or not done it for whatever reason, then thought, well, okay, let's have a go at least now, and it should then theoretically be easier.
Exactly. So we've also developed a code of conduct that all of our have implemented. They display it in their event regulations at events, just to remind people of the way to behave and conduct themselves. We've also implemented better safeguarding policies, and also given guidance to motorsport clubs on how to make their events inclusive to all. So an example I'll give you is that it's really surprising to know how many events before we launched the Better Together Initiative didn't organise toilets for women. So as you'll probably know, a lot of grassroots motorsport takes place in the middle of nowhere. There's probably no facilities. We're in a field. There's probably not any phone signal. There's nothing around. And because it's always been thought of motorsport is for men, of course, they can go by the bushes, but that's not something that we can do. So things like organising toilet facilities were just a complete, they weren't thought of, they weren't considered. And for that very reason, women probably weren't getting involved so much, because they weren't being catered for. But that's something that now...
that's ridiculously complicated either. It's something just straightforward and simple and easy to do to make it feel more inclusive and welcoming. And you just think, how has this not been thought of?
Definitely. But that's something that we've been able to have almost an instant impact, where in our area, all of our motorsport clubs now understand what they need to do to make their events accessible and inclusive to all. And women can know that they are going to be catered for all of our events. And I believe that that's going to keep more women involved in the long run. But when they come to their first event, they're more likely to stay in the sport because they are catered for.
So first impressions and all that.
Yeah, it's been exactly. We want to be welcomed and included like any other competitor. So I don't think that we should be not thought of or included when events are being organised, because we are 50% of the population. And I think women, although previously it's been perceived that women maybe just aren't interested in cars and things like that, I think women are very interested in cars and motorsport. It's just been a case of they've not been included or considered when events do, because it's not like marketed towards them. Of course, they're not going to go.
And so how did it get into the Coventry Museum of Transport then? Because it just, I mean, it sounds like it grew quite a bit and got its own breadth of life, but then you've got like a permanent thing in a museum now. That's just a bit surreal in its own way, no?
It is so surreal. Like, I can't believe it. I really can't. So we were sort of linked up with Elizabeth at Coventry Transport Museum, and she told us about the Women in Motorsport exhibition they're looking to put on. So it's been at Coventry Transport Museum, I think, from the end of January, and it's going right on until I think the end of May. She was looking to compile various resources, stories, initiatives, lots of information about all of motorsport and women's involvement. So myself and Elizabeth met, and I sort of told her all about the Better Together Initiative, and she felt that fitted really well in one part of the exhibition, talk about what's currently being done to get more women in motorsport. Yeah, it was brilliant to be able to tell the story of, not only my dissertation findings and share the voices of those 150 women that I did speak to, but also to add a real positive spin to these things. Although there were shocking findings, this is what we're doing now, and we're trying to create something really great out of this and harness those findings as a means to create good. So yeah, it was brilliant. And I hope that women, when they've read that, if they were interested in motorsport, they'll think, oh, I'm being considered now. There's a lot being done to get more women in motorsport. This is an avenue that I can actually go down should I want to.
And if they're not, they might know someone who isn't sure about it, and they can say, oh, look at this, and maybe, and then from there and there, it hopefully snowballs in the right direction then.
Definitely sharing more female role models. I think in the media, we always see those in elite sport, which is great, perhaps, but I personally feel that it's more realistic. A lot of women, if they're going to get involved in motorsport, it's going to be at the grassroots. So we need to be sharing images of those who are, participating in grassroots motorsport, whether that's production car trials, that sort of thing, because then young girls and women can actually resonate with those people more than they can those participating in W Series, because they see the photos of them competing and they can genuinely go and do that if they want to. Whereas, if you see someone, or example, it doesn't. If I was to see a photo, there's no way I'm getting into Formula One. It's just the steps. There's so many. If someone sees, a female participating in grassroots motorsport, whether that's marshalling, then you can do it. You can resonate with them. They're just a normal woman. So I think that's part of it. We're really trying to share stories of normal, strong women who participate to inspire others.
I was going to say, you can inspire a lot of people by saying, like with W Series, you can show that they're there on the world stage. But again, it's not just, oh, I'll just turn up and do this kind of thing. You need them at every single level to show that there is a path there, and there isn't just kind of a very limited route still just to get to that one pinnacle, essentially. So having it throughout.
I think once we bring more women and all people into the grassroots, that's that bottom triangle. So naturally, more people and more women are going to rise up to the top following that. But we need to sort the environment out at the grassroots first. Otherwise, we're not going to get those people in who are talented enough. And it is a statistical game, isn't it, as to whether you reach the epitome and get into the reason why there's more men, of course, in the likes of Formula One and WRC, because if you think on a percentage wise, if 95% of competitors are male, then of course the likelihood is that those at the top of the game will be that gender.
Simple as that. Do you have a favourite racing memory from your time racing so far?
Oh, well, that's quite a hard one, really. I've competed in some brilliant events. I personally love forest rallies. So a recent highlight for me, or various highlights, is sort of like the Moulton Rally and the Wydene Rally. I just really enjoy being out in the forest doing some what we call sort of proper rallying, really. That's what the Anglia is built for.
Yeah.
But if I'm talking about my actual favourite memory, I think it has actually got to be what we're doing Better Together, and actually not me competing, but volunteering and doing things behind the scenes in the sport, because I just as you can probably tell, it's so important to me. So being able to get more women into the sport, being able to share my passion in sport with other people, encourage them to take part, I think for me is most important, and that comes before my own endeavours in my just.
I was going to say, because you mean when you go racing and you get that personal satisfaction from what you've done with whoever you were driving with at that time, and that's nice for the day. But then with the Better Together stuff, like you say, you've got that knowledge that you feel good about what you're doing as well, obviously, but you're being able to help all these people out in the process, and there's that kind of that extra boost, I guess, that you might not have with the racing, where if you need that extra bit of motivation in the morning to get up for some reason, then it's like, yeah, you can go and help all these people. It's not just channeling it all in one direction, is going in lots of different ways, and you don't know you might not be aware of how you're helping people sometimes until they come and tell you how you've done it, sorry.
Yeah, I think it's just so important to me to hopefully pave, long-term better opportunities for women and get more women involved in the sport. Like, I, of course, like you say, I enjoy what I do and I love rallying and I love the events, but I want more people to experience that.
Yeah. And say, why should you have all the fun?
Yeah, exactly. It'd be great to see some more women out there. And also just in event, still, I could look at an events list, and out of probably, if you're talking 100 crews, rarely any of them are all female. So if you look at the amount of women actually taking part in the event, in a lot of rallying, there's probably less than, a handful of women out of probably like 150 competitors or something, in total. So yeah, we're a small percentage. I think it'll be brilliant once we've got more involved.
Definitely. And also looking to the future, do you have any particular races on your bucket list that you'd like to compete in?
Yeah, so for me, I think the RAC rally would just be amazing. So the Roger Albert Clark, there's so much history like steeped in that event. But it's also just the rally of all rallies, a 4 or 5 day event traveling across the UK, with special stages in England, Scotland, Wales. It is the rally. So one day to be able to do that and hopefully say that I've finished it would be brilliant.
I would say one thing to start it, definitely nothing to finish it.
Yeah, I think that's the thing with the RAC. It's just amazing to be able to get to the end. So I'd love to do that. And of course, it's that sort of historic. And that's the sort of cars attributed in the events like the RAC are my personal favourites. Seeing the Mark II Escorts, that's what interests me rather than the R5s. I think for me, there's nothing better than seeing a Mark II Escort or a historic car flying through the Escort. The sound of that is far better than listening to a Ford Fiesta R5.
As well with the historical ones as well, you get that kind of extra level of satisfaction where you don't really mind where you finish as long as you do, because you can just say, yeah, I competed in that and I finished it.
Definitely. And cars have a mind of their own as well. So I think actually the historic cars are probably more reliable than the modern ones, to be honest.
Makes it more fun though, doesn't it?
Definitely.
A couple of non-motorsport related questions to finish off. First of all, do you have who's the funniest comedian for you?
Oh my goodness. I mean, to be fair, I do like things, but for me, I have a really dry sense of humour. So I do really like Ian and Paul from Have I Got News for You? I think they're just brilliant. I love that sense of humour.
Very, very yin and yang.
Yeah, very dry.
I do like those.
Very sarcastic. Yeah.
And a final question: you've got two very, very cute dogs, which if anyone looks on your Instagram, they'll see them. But if you couldn't choose them for this answer, what is your favourite type of animal?
Oh, I am an animal person. I'm a massive animal person. But you're probably gonna find this quite boring, but I think my second answer would be cat. I don't have a cat myself, but my boyfriend Tommy has such a cute Siamese cat. So yeah, it'd be cats.
I'll say there goes the next question. I was going to maybe ask a dog or a cat person, but you're going to be
I'm
split
still
down
a
the
dog
middle.
person.
I'm still dog person. Okay.
Yeah, dogs over cats all the way.
Well, we have to check these things. Got to make sure. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you today, and great to learn about the Be Together. Because again, I wasn't aware of it before, but I'm definitely going to have a look at it now a bit more in more detail. And best of luck for the 2022 season and beyond.
Oh, thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Thanks again to Laura for coming onto the Kerbs with me, and I want to wish her the best of luck for 2022 and beyond. Join me again soon when I'll be chatting to another famous face from the world of motorsport. And in the meantime, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and check out the other videos on the On the Kerbs YouTube channel. If you want to listen to me talk about Formula 1, amongst other things, you can do that over on the Undercut podcast. Away from YouTube, you can follow me over on Instagram at t.elwes.daily.onthekerbs and read my various motorsport articles over on Is It Fast, Paddock Sorority and Supercar Blondie. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you again next week for the next episode.